Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of GitLab HA. So if you haven't been watching the series, we made a part 1 kind of showing the introduction of what GitLab HA kind of looks like, as well as configure our first internal load balancer for GitLab HA for when those services are ready and available. In this one, we'll be doing the next step, which will be configuring the Consul service, as well as get the Ansible Playbook stuff kind of ready for getting the rest of the stuff running too, as well. So there's going to be a lot of copying and pasting and kind of getting all the details ready. But we'll get the Consul service running in this part of the video. So let's get started. All right, so we last left off on this where we will be now configuring the Consul service. So we will actually do the first few steps, but we won't do number 3 yet until we do it in GitLab, essentially. So if you've never done the GitLab Omnibus installation, it's actually pretty simple. You can kind of go through, we're running Red Hat, so we'll be doing this, and we'll be running through these commands, essentially. So the thing is, the only difference between this is you won't be setting the external URL in regards to the setup. You'll actually be doing just the GitLab EE install, and you'll essentially be set with that. So what we want to do is essentially run these commands so that we can get certain things, but we'll also run it, create the playbook for it. So let's create a new file. We'll install GitLab HA here, .yaml. So essentially all the things that we'll need to do. Anyways, install GitLab HA. And let me take a look at my existing playbook to kind of help guide me. There's so many steps. It's going to be hopefully interesting in regards to it just works, because one typo, one mistake, just logical errors are the worst when it comes to doing things, and it's not like a simple 2-liner, right? So what we'll want to do first is essentially install the prereqs packages, right? So we'll do Ansible built-in yum, and we will essentially parameterize this with the Ansible item, because you can use with items as kind of like a for loop, which is pretty cool. So with items, and then we'll just do this. So curl PyCore's util Python, which actually doesn't exist in this in the version that I'm running, so we won't actually run that. And then OpenSSH and Perl. So let's get those added. So curl OpenSSH server, and then Perl. I'm pretty sure OpenSSH is installed because I SSH to all my servers, obviously, but it's always good to just have it in there, and Ansible would just be like, hey, it's installed, no biggie, right? So we'll run this, and I'll just run it on the server itself too, because we will need to grab some stuff as well. So we'll let that run in the background. If you are doing firewall related things, you'll probably want to run the next few steps. I just disable the firewall for my home lab just to make it easier to not have to worry about all the little detail services. If you were to do email stuff, which I'm not doing either, you can set up postfix. But otherwise, you can run the next step here, which will essentially set up the GitLab repo so that you can install GitLab. So what we'll do is add GitLab repo. In this case, Ansible built-in shell, because it's just a command that they have. And we'll actually want to do that and do that. Yep. So that should be good. And then we'll use the args parameter here so that it will only run if the repository doesn't already exist. Repos D, GitLab EE repo, because it will create that. So we can run that on the server as well. And I think I might have already installed GitLab. Oh, okay. Perl's already installed. So I'm pretty sure. I had to run through this just to make sure everything works. Yeah. So PyCore utils Python doesn't exist, but Perl does exist, and that's all good. So then we can paste this. It will download the repo here, repository, to be added. eventually. There we go. Installs. Yep. Downloading. All right, repository setup. You can now install packages. So what we want to do is actually do, like a yum install gitlab EE, but we want to be actually very intentional about what we do here, right? So we want to actually show duplicate list and grep for GitLab. And we want to actually specify the version that we're installing so that every single machine has the exact same version. Because the last thing you want is to have different versions across multiple different machines. And then you're like, oh God, that kind of is rough. So we're going to use the GitLab EE. We'll use the latest. So we use the 17.5.1 EE.0.EL8 is the one that we will use. So what we can do here in the playbook, name install GitLab, and we'll just do Ansible built-in yum name, and it will be GitLab EE 17.5.1 EE.0.EL8 is what it should be, and state we'll do present. So that it just installs that. And then we can run that. So essentially we would just run this on here. I need to get a certain file off of here so that we can actually run through it. So GitLab EE 17.5.1. Is it? It's hyphen, not hyphen 7.5.1 hyphen EE.0.EL8. So we can run this on here as well. So this will essentially install base GitLab, and it's already installed because I was doing this earlier. So what we'll need to do is cat etc gitlab.rb. And I'm hoping, it looks like it should show everything, which is great. So we'll copy this gitlab.rb file because this is what we'll be editing for every single service and machine, because essentially how the omnibus works is the omnibus includes everything, right? And for GitLab HA, we're essentially just saying, hey, only certain things will run on this server that is part of the omnibus, which is pretty smart actually on how it works. So it makes it simple that you don't have to think about certain things. So we'll add another template here, gitlab.rb.j2. And paste the whole configuration in here, right? So now we can go back and reference. So we did essentially step 2. Step 3 would be editing this GitLab RB and then reconfiguring it. And then we won't worry about this because this is just validating. So what we'll want to do, and this is kind of where it gets a lot more interesting on the screen sharing and everything. And I'm hoping this is actually big enough to make sense. Okay, so hopefully my face won't be covering anything. So we'll need to update essentially each one of these lines, but we will do it in the JNinja 2 formatting, which will make it easy to essentially configure, because you can configure it as well. So what we'll want to do is get to the role section. We'll try to keep everything in similar location. So we can see here the roles for this is commented out. But what we'll do here is if console in inventory hostname. So this is essentially saying if in the inventory hostname console exists, which because we named all of our servers with a specific service, it will exist. We will want to set it up so that roles will be essentially the console role. And that's essentially it. So we can now do an end if here. So essentially, if this is true, it will say this line exists. And we'll be doing this for every single service, which makes it easy. So we have one GitLab RB file that will be dynamically created based off of the host name for the certain things. Next, we can copy the next part here, which looks like it is right here, and it is currently set to false. So what we'll do is set it to true. We'll do the same thing. So we'll say if console role in inventory host name, and we'll make sure you close the bracket, and then end if this setting will be enabled and set to true. And then we can configure the console configuration here. So let's take a look here. So we got console configuration, and we'll essentially delete this and copy what's in there. So let's double check. Yep. And then we'll copy this, but we'll need to update the stuff. And this is why this configuration is nice, because this essentially will have to be on every single server. So we'll end if that, and we will if console in inventory hostname. And then these are the IPs in regards to the console servers based off of the documentation, but you can actually use host names as well. So what we'll do is we'll set it at gitlab console one.dragon.local, and then we'll repeat it for the other two nodes too as well. So we'll copy this, gitlab console 2, and then gitlab console 3. And then we should be good for that. And then we need to set the node exporter because it uses Prometheus to, analyze stuff. So we'll grab the node exporter address. So look at this. So you can see it's commented out. We'll uncomment it. Set if console in inventory host name. We will set this, and we will actually listen to this on 000, 9100, and we'll make sure we have to end if this close. And then we'll want to make sure database migrations aren't enabled, because the last thing you want is for something to auto migrate and break your instance when you're not expecting to be running it. So what we'll do here is the same thing. If console in inventory host name. Make sure you get the formatting correctly, because if you don't, it will not work. And troubleshooting that, I can tell you, is a pain in, because I had to do that because I missed one of the ending brackets on one of these, and I was just like, oh my god, where is it? So that is set to false. So essentially, that is all that you need here for at least the console service. Other ones will need a little bit more. Others might be very similar to this. So we will go back to our GitLab HA. So after this, we need to reconfigure GitLab, which is essentially GitLab CTL reconfigure. But what we need to also do in the playbook is actually upload the new file. So update etc GitLab, gitlab.rb, Ansible built-in .template. So we'll use the template because it technically is a template. So source templates, gitlab.rb.j2, destination will be etc gitlab, gitlab.rb. We'll want to make sure this is owner of root, because that's actually what the file should be, root, and we'll make sure that the ownership is 600 here. And then we will add a register here so that we can play off of this if we need to restart GitLab as well, or get it reconfigured. So we'll set the register as template. And then what we'll want to do here is reconfigure GitLab. So we'll use built-in shell, which is just GitLab CTL reconfigure, which will run the reconfigure with the new thing. And we only want this to run when essentially the template is up or changed, which means that it was updated essentially. Because if it doesn't change, we don't really need to do the GitLab CTL. And then once that's done, it says, loop through all the nodes, make sure everything's good, which is expected. And then we can run this command to validate that all the members exist. So let's commit this. So set up GitLab HA console. We can see that this will essentially run the playbook. We will need to go to our AWX instance here. AWX. And then what we want to do is once this is done, which is it's done now, we can create a new template. So add job template, set up GitLab HA. So we'll use this job template for every single part of GitLab HA outside of the load balancers. So because the configuration, every single machine will need to run through this configuration, and we'll update the configuration to support it essentially. So install GitLab HA. Credentials, we'll use the root credential, and the only difference is the host name will be set to whatever the hosts are. So the good part about this is actually we'll want to update this to include serial. So this means how many machines can run in parallel. And that's the important part, because if you're running it on 3 machines, you don't want it to be sequential, right? You don't want it to run the first, then once that's done, do the second, then do the third. You might as well run them all at the same time, because that's what's going to be needed to make it quick and simple. So we'll set the default to just be 1, but we will update serial. I know it kind of sounds weird because you're like talking about like cereal sounds like the same as like you can eat like milk and cereal. And then we'll edit this to include the serial number as well. Number, and we'll set it as 3 because most of these are 3-part configurations, and we should be good. So we'll wait for this. It should deploy here real quick. Deployed. So we are all set. So what we can do is essentially now do GitLab console 1, GitLab console 2, and GitLab console 3. We could have made a group for it, but I think this still makes sense right now to just kind of show and display. So we can now hit run, launch, and it should just do all that for all 3 machines. So this is obviously kind of the precursor to every single thing that we'll be doing for the rest of GitLab HA. So this one's longer for the most part because we had to get GitLab actually set up on one of the instances so that we could get the gitlab.rb file. But in the next few ones, we can just edit the gitlab.rb or do any of the prereqs, edit the gitlab.rb, and then just run it, which will be pretty simple. So you can see some of these. So curl and OpenSSH were installed on the first instance, and but Perl was installed on the second and third instance, but wasn't on the first because we already installed it on the first. So same thing over here, adding the GitLab repo. So you can see how these are all running at the same time and working together. So it might take a few seconds here for GitLab to install, but once it does, it should just essentially finish it out here. But we'll fast forward the video once this pipeline is finished. All right, so it looks like we clearly messed up in writing our thing. So we can see unexpected token and statement. So let's go take a look back at our configuration. And this is where I was like, this is a pain. So we got this, that looks good. Let's go back to roles here real quick. So if console brackets, we're good. That looks good. Let's go to the console monitoring. If console, console and inventory host name, and then console configuration, which is down here, console and inventory host name, and if, yeah. So we're good in there. It probably auto-completed when I hit enter. Fix console. And that is what does happen when you don't actually like pay attention completely when you're typing. So those are the not so fun errors, obviously. But this is actually not too bad now, because now the playbook, because everything should already be set up at the very beginning. What we can do here is essentially just rerun it with the same parameters here in here, and we should be good. So I think we could technically relaunch, but I like just rerunning a new job to not clutter up existing jobs. I like to know that that job failed. You know. So set up GitLab HA. We'll do the same thing. Paste the host back in here, and this should be significantly quicker because things have already ran once to install. So all the installation stuff should be good, and then it'll just now essentially get to the GitLab HA part in regards to the GitLab.rb part, and do the GitLab reconfigure after it's done. So let's take a look here to see it finish. GitLab repo. So now that you have officially good syntax, it does the GitLab RB. So this uploaded. So now, since that has uploaded, it'll do the GitLab reconfigure, and fingers crossed that the reconfigure also works, because that's the other part that could fail, where you have a good GitLab thing, but it's not set up correctly. And this will probably take a minute or two, so we'll also fast forward this part of the video. Sweet. So it did the reconfigure. It's all good. We can see the output looks pretty good. It's going to go through a lot of things, and at the very end, GitLab reconfigured. So we should be set. Actually, we should probably do a GitLab CTL restart too. So actually, we'll add it to the playbook, but we won't need to run it, because I think the console stuff works fine. But technically, if the breaking config, you probably want to do the GitLab restart GitLab Ansible built-in shell, and GitLab CTL restart, just to make sure, you know, anything that might have worked changed. So we'll add that, but we won't rerun it. So add GitLab CTL restart. So for future plays, it will work great, but this should work perfectly. So what we can do here is actually, now we're logged into one of the console servers. We can actually run the commands to see if the members actually show up correctly. So there should be 3 members. So we can see here, and I might actually make this just, oh no. I had like a good setup over there for a second. 1 second. We'll probably use the same setup for when we make the next few videos, but let's maximize this while waiting. But you can see here that it does show 3 servers. They're all alive. Everything's configured. So that means everything is reading correctly. And we could run the status to see, you know, hey, is it actually running? Oh, that's not what I want. GitLab CTL status, which then should appear everything is running. So you got the console, log rotate, and node exporter, which is the 3 services that you would be expecting for this server. So that means everything's configured for the console service, so we are good to go. So next thing is configuring Postgres. So we'll be using the Omnibus version for Postgres as well. And then so you could do it with an external Postgres service, but we'll do their specific Postgres service. So we got some prereqs here, but we will continue that once in the next part. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this part of the video, configuring the console service. If you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.